You do not need to understand anything tonight. You do not need to remember what you heard before. You do not need to follow every word or hold on to any meaning. For now, it is enough to be here. Let the day remain where it belongs. You do not have to carry it with you into this moment. Whatever was unfinished can stay unfinished. Whatever was unclear does not need clarity now. The world has its own rhythm, fast, insistent, always asking for attention. It pulls the mind outward, toward plans, toward judgments, toward endless movement. That rhythm is not wrong. It has its place. But for this moment, you are not required to move with it. You are allowed to slow. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to stop responding. Notice the simple fact of your body being here, the way it occupies space, the way it is supported quietly, without effort. The surface beneath you is holding your weight. You do not need to hold yourself. Breathe-in is already happening. You do not need to guide it. You do not need to deepen it. You do not need to improve it. Each breath arrives on its own. Each breath leaves on its own. There is a quiet intelligence in this, a knowing that does not explain itself, a rhythm that existed long before thought began to comment on it. Tonight is not about learning something new. It is about returning to something familiar, something that has always been present but often overlooked. The mind is used to reaching forward, to naming, to understanding, to organizing experience into something useful. That habit can soften now. You do not need to push it away. You do not need to control it. If thoughts appear, let them appear. If they drift away, let them drift. If they return again, that is fine too. There is no correct way for this moment to unfold. You are not being asked to arrive anywhere. You are not being guided toward a conclusion. Nothing is being measured. Simply allow the pace to change. As the body settles, as the breath finds its own depth, something else begins to happen. Attention loosens its grip. Listening becomes effortless. You may notice small sensations, the quiet weight of your limbs, the gentle rise and fall within the chest, the soft boundary between sound and silence. None of these need to be examined. They can exist without commentary. They can pass without being named. This is a space where nothing is required of you, a space where understanding can rest too. Here, the need to grasp begins to fade. The need to follow begins to dissolve. And in its place, a softer awareness remains, one that does not rush, one that does not insist. You have already done enough today. You have already carried enough. There is nothing more you need to accomplish before resting. For now, let yourself return. Not forward, not backward, just here. Here where the body knows how to settle, here where the breath remembers its own rhythm, here where the mind can pause without effort. And as this quiet continues, there is nothing you need to hold on to, nothing you need to let go of, only this moment unfolding gently, exactly as it is. And even this moment does not need to be special. It does not need to feel deep. It does not need to feel calm right away. Whatever you notice is enough. Sometimes rest arrives gently. Sometimes it arrives slowly, almost unnoticed. And sometimes it arrives simply because nothing else is being asked of you. There is no schedule for this, no expectation to meet. The body understands how to rest, even when the mind is unsure. Muscles that have been holding all day can begin to release without instruction. The jaw can soften, the shoulders can settle, the space behind the eyes can grow quiet. You do not need to check if this is happening. You do not need to look for signs. Rest does not require attention. It happens in its own way. Breath continues, steady and unforced. Not long, not short, just enough. Each breath is a small reminder that effort is optional here. The mind may still wander. It may replay moments from the day. It may reach toward tomorrow. That movement does not disturb this space. Thoughts can pass through like distant lights moving across the night, seen but not followed, present but not demanding. You do not need to stay with any one thought. You do not need to finish any story. Everything can remain incomplete. This is a place where unfinished things are allowed, where questions can remain open, where answers are not required. Silence does not need to be created. It is already here, beneath the surface of sound. Even the sound of this voice does not need to be held. It can move through and fade naturally. Listening can become softer, less focused, more spacious. You may notice that the edges of attention blur, that the need to follow each sentence weakens. That is not a problem. That is part of resting. There is nothing important hidden in these words, nothing you need to remember later. They are only here to keep you company as everything slows. The body continues to settle in small, quiet ways, a little more weight, a little more ease. Time itself seems to stretch, loosen its sharpness. There is no hurry now, no next step waiting, just this steady unfolding. And as this moment continues, it becomes clear that nothing is missing, nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be taken away. You are allowed to remain exactly as you are, held by the surface beneath you, carried by the rhythm of breath. Here, effort dissolves naturally. Here, doing gives way to being, and without trying to rest, rest begins to happen. During the day, the world asks for many things, not loudly perhaps, but constantly. It asks you to decide, to compare, to respond. Even when nothing urgent is happening, there is a subtle pull outward, a sense that attention should be somewhere else, that something needs to be checked or considered or prepared. This movement becomes familiar, so familiar that it often goes unnoticed. The mind learns to stay slightly ahead of itself, reaching toward what comes next, replaying what is already past. There is nothing wrong with this. It is how the world moves, but it can be tiring. Tonight you do not need to move with it. The pull outward can soften, not by force, not by resistance, simply by no longer responding. Notice how many small efforts are usually present. The effort to stay alert, the effort to keep track, the effort to remain oriented. None of these are needed now. You are not required to be available. You are not required to be efficient. You are not required to be clear. The world can continue on its own. Here, there is no task waiting, no message to answer, no situation to manage. Attention does not need to reach outward. It can remain close, near the body, near the breath. As that outward pull weakens, something else becomes noticeable. A sense of space appears, not an empty space, just a quieter one. The body begins to feel more present, not in a dramatic way, simply more here than elsewhere. You may notice that thoughts lose some urgency. They still appear, but they do not ask to be followed. Plans can remain unfinished. Memories can remain incomplete. Nothing needs to be organized. This moment does not require orientation. You do not need to know where you are in time. You do not need to know what comes next. The world outside this moment continues, but it does not need your attention right now. You're allowed to step back from it, not away, just back, as if standing slightly behind the flow, watching it pass without entering. The pace naturally slows. Breathing becomes more noticeable again, not because you focus on it, but because there is less noise around it. The body responds to this change quietly. Muscles ease without instruction. Posture softens on its own. Even the face can rest. The eyes, the jaw, the forehead, areas that are often held without awareness. There is no need to check for tension. Whatever releases, releases. Whatever remains, remains. The world is very good at pulling attention outward. It has practiced for a long time, but it is not the only direction attention can move. There is also a way inward, not inward toward thought, but inward toward presence, toward what is already here and does not require effort. In this direction, there is no goal, no progress, only a gentle return. You do not need to stay alert for this. You do not need to guide it. As the outward pull fades, rest does not rush in. It settles gradually, quietly, almost unnoticed, and that is enough. There is nothing you need to do to make this moment deeper, nothing you need to add to make it complete. Simply remain where you are as attention no longer reaches outward and the world, for now, loosens its hold. There is a part of the mind that wants to know. It wants to understand what is happening. It wants to place each experience into a clear shape. This movement begins very early in life, before words are fully formed, before questions can be spoken. The mind learns to reach, to recognize, to connect one thing to another. This ability is not a mistake. It helps us move through the world. It helps us remember. It helps us decide. But knowing is not the same as resting, and the mind often forgets the difference, even when the body is still, even when the day has ended. The habit of knowing can continue. The mind may try to understand this moment, to ask whether it is working, to check whether something is happening yet. That effort is familiar, and it can soften now. Tonight, there is no need to know what this experience is. There is no need to name it. There is no need to decide whether it is deep enough. Understanding can pause without disappearing. It does not need to be pushed away. It does not need to be corrected. It can simply rest. Notice how different this feels from trying to stop thinking. There is no struggle here, no opposition. Knowing is not being removed. It is being allowed to step aside. In its place, something quieter remains, something that does not ask questions, something that does not seek answers. Rest does not come from understanding more. It comes from allowing less. The body already knows how to rest. It does not analyze its own weight. It does not evaluate the breath. It simply settles when the conditions are right. As attention eases away from knowing, it naturally moves closer to sensation, closer to presence. You may notice how the body feels from the inside, not as an object, just as a lived experience. There is warmth, there is heaviness, there may be subtle movement. None of this needs interpretation. The breath continues without instruction. The heart continues without awareness. Life is already happening without the mind's help. Knowing often wants to stand in front of experience, to explain it as it unfolds, to stay slightly ahead. Rest happens when knowing steps back, when experience is allowed to arrive first. This does not make the mind disappear. It simply changes its role. Instead of leading, it follows. Instead of questioning, it listens. And listening here does not require effort. You do not need to listen carefully. You do not need to stay focused. Sound can pass through without being held. Sensation can arise without being named. Even this voice does not need to be understood. It can become part of the background, like a gentle current carrying attention along. When knowing rests, time feels different. Moments are no longer measured. There is no sense of progress. There is only continuation. This is not a special state. It is a familiar one. It appears naturally when effort decreases, when the need to grasp softens. Children often rest here easily, before knowing becomes dominant, before understanding is expected. That capacity has not disappeared. It has only been covered by habit. Tonight, there's no need to uncover it, no need to return anywhere. Simply allowing knowing to rest is enough. You may notice that questions lose their sharpness. They no longer press forward. They no longer demand answers. They can remain unanswered without discomfort. This is not confusion. It is ease. The world does not need to be resolved right now. Life does not need to make sense in this moment. Rest does not require meaning, as knowing remains at rest. The body continues to settle. The breath continues its rhythm. Nothing is being missed. You are not falling behind. You are not losing awareness. You are simply allowing a different kind of attention to remain. One that does not reach, one that does not explain, one that rests. There is a quiet relief in not needing to know, a softening that happens when the mind realizes it can pause. Nothing bad follows this pause. Nothing falls apart. The world does not require constant explanation in order to exist. Your life does not depend on understanding every moment. Rest is safe. As knowing stays at rest, awareness becomes simpler, less directional, less concerned with outcome. It does not move toward answers. It does not move away from questions. It simply remains. In this remaining, the body feels more trustworthy. It knows when to settle. It knows how to let go of what it no longer needs to hold. You do not have to tell it how, even if the mind briefly returns to knowing, even if it tries to understand again. That is not a problem. Rest does not end because knowing visits. It continues underneath, like a deep current beneath the surface, unaffected by small movements above. You may notice that effort feels unnecessary now. Not wrong, just unnecessary. There is nowhere else to be, nothing else to attend to. This moment does not ask for clarity. It does not ask for meaning. It only asks that you remain. And remaining here does not require intention. It happens naturally, quietly, on its own. Sometimes a word is heard before it is felt, and sometimes a feeling arrives long before it has a name. Emptiness can be like that. It is often misunderstood as absence, as nothingness, as something missing, but that understanding comes from thinking about the word, not from resting inside the experience. Here, emptiness does not mean that nothing is here. It means that nothing needs to be held. Notice how the body feels when it is not being managed, when there is no effort to sit a certain way, when there is no attempt to relax correctly. There is still sensation, still warmth, still presence. Nothing has disappeared. What changes is the sense of weight around experience, the pressure to define it, the need to shape it into something solid. Emptiness is not an idea to understand. It is a feeling of release, like loosening a grip that you did not realize was there. You may notice that thoughts feel lighter here. They arise, they pass. They do not land with the same heaviness. They do not demand the same response. This does not mean thinking stops. It means thinking no longer carries weight. The body continues to rest. The breath continues to move. Life continues without interruption. Emptiness allows this continuity because nothing is being grasped. When nothing is grasped, there is nothing to lose. This is not something you need to create. It appears naturally when effort decreases. When the need to hold experience still softens, you may notice moments where boundaries feel less sharp, where the edge between inside and outside feels gentler. Sounds may feel closer or farther away. Both are fine. Emptiness does not require a particular sensation. It does not announce itself. It simply allows things to be as they are. The body does not need to be empty of sensation. The mind does not need to be empty of thought. Emptiness lives in the space around them. In a lack of resistance, in the absence of pressure, nothing needs to be pushed out. Nothing needs to be invited in. Experience is free to move. You may notice that time feels less defined here. Moments do not stack up. They do not point forward. They simply arrive, and then they are gone. This is not disorientation. It is ease. When there is no need to measure experience, there is no need to track it. Emptiness does not remove meaning. It removes the need to search for it. Rest does not depend on understanding what is happening. It depends on allowing what is happening. The body understands this without instruction. Muscles release when they no longer need to hold. Breath deepens when it is no longer watched. Awareness becomes open, not focused, not scattered, just open. In this openness, nothing is missing, nothing is added. You're not becoming less. You're not disappearing. You are simply no longer holding yourself together so tightly. This is why emptiness feels gentle, not dramatic. It does not collapse experience. It softens it. Thoughts pass more easily. Sensations come and go without friction. Even attention feels less directed, less pointed. It can rest anywhere, or nowhere in particular. There is no need to stay with any one thing. There is no need to move away from anything. Emptiness does not require balance. It allows imbalance without disturbance. It allows movement without attachment. As this sense continues, the body remains supported. The breath remains steady. Nothing has to be done to maintain it, even if effort returns briefly, even if the mind tries to understand again. Emptiness does not disappear. It remains underneath, like space behind every movement. You do not need to stay here. You do not need to deepen this. Simply resting is enough. Emptiness is already doing its work by asking nothing of you. There is a calm that comes from not needing to fill space, not needing to occupy every moment with intention. Emptiness allows pauses to remain pauses. They do not need to become something else. You may notice that even waiting loses its shape here. There is nothing being waited for, nothing expected to arrive. This absence of expectation is gentle. It does not demand patience. It does not require trust. It simply lets the moment be unfinished. In this unfinished quality, the body feels less organized, but also less strained. Breath moves without direction. Awareness drifts without losing stability. There is no center that must be protected, no edge that must be maintained. Emptiness does not ask you to dissolve. It asks nothing at all, and because nothing is asked, there is nothing to resist. You may notice that even the sense of self feels quieter, not gone, just less insistent. It does not need to stand forward. It does not need to explain itself. It can rest among sensations, among sounds, among silence. This resting does not weaken you. It softens what no longer needs to be held, and in that softening, the night continues on its own. The mind is familiar with questions. It has learned that questions lead somewhere, that they open doors, that they move things forward. For a long time, questions have been treated as tools, something to use, something to resolve. When a question appears, the mind often leans toward it. It tries to shape it, to narrow it, to find its edge. This habit is not wrong. It has helped many things come into focus, but not every question asks for an answer. Some questions arise simply because awareness is open, because attention is not occupied, because there is space. These questions do not point forward. They do not point anywhere at all. They appear, and they can remain. Tonight, questions do not need to be followed. They do not need to be explored. They do not need to be settled. They can exist without direction. You may notice subtle questions drifting through, questions without clear words, without clear subjects, a sense of wondering, a feeling of curiosity without urgency. There is no need to turn toward it, no need to turn away. When questions are not chased, they lose their sharpness. They become softer, less demanding. The body does not tense around them. The breath does not change. Life continues even when questions remain open. This is something the body already understands. It lives with uncertainty constantly, and yet it continues to function. The heart does not wait for answers to beat. The breath does not wait for understanding to move. Questions often belong to the future. They ask what will come next, what should happen, what something means. Rest belongs to the present. And the present does not require explanation. You may notice that when questions are left alone, a sense of relief appears, not relief from solving something, but relief from no longer needing to. The mind can relax its forward lean. It can stop reaching. Questions can float without weight, like clouds that do not announce weather. They do not need to clear. They do not need to gather. They can simply pass. This does not mean curiosity disappears. It means curiosity no longer pulls. It no longer insists on movement. In this way, questions become quiet companions, not guides, not obstacles. They sit in the background, unresolved, untroubled. There is a subtle freedom here, the freedom of not having to know. Nothing bad happens when answers are missing. Nothing collapses. The world does not require completion in order to continue. You may notice that silence feels different when questions are not active. It feels less expectant, less tense. It does not wait to be filled. This kind of silence is gentle. It does not pressure the mind. Even if a question returns, even if it repeats, it does not disturb this rest. Questions lose their authority here. They are no longer commands. They are simply events. You do not need to decide what they mean. You do not need to place them anywhere. They can exist and fade naturally. As this continues, attention feels less directional, less pointed toward outcome. There is no sense of progress, no sense of delay, only presence continuing quietly. The body remains settled, the breath remains unforced. Nothing is waiting. Questions do not need to disappear for rest to deepen. They only need to stop being followed, and when they are no longer followed, they lose their power to disturb. They become part of the night, part of the background, and the night does not ask for answers. There is a quiet strength in allowing questions to remain unanswered. Not the strength of control, but the strength of trust without expectation. This trust does not need belief, it does not need reassurance. It rests in the simple observation that life continues, even when nothing is concluded. Questions often carry a sense of urgency, as if something important depends on them. Here, that urgency can soften. It can dissolve without effort. Nothing is being neglected. Nothing essential is being missed. The mind may notice this and feel surprised, as if expecting consequences that never arrive. This surprise can fade too. When questions no longer lead attention forward, attention begins to spread gently. It is no longer narrow, no longer pointed. It becomes wide enough to include uncertainty, wide enough to include silence. In this width, there is room to rest. Questions can settle into this space, not answered, not rejected, simply held loosely. You do not need to be patient with them. You do not need to tolerate them. They are no longer a problem to manage. They are just part of what is passing. As the night deepens, questions lose their edges. They blend into the background, like distant shapes that no longer need focus. And in that blending, the body remains calm. The breath remains steady. Nothing is disturbed by what is unresolved. This is enough. Knowing can move in different directions. Most of the time it moves outward, outward toward objects, outward toward explanations, outward toward what can be named and arranged. This movement is useful. It helps the world function. It helps things connect. But it also keeps attention slightly away from where you are, even when the body is still, even when the eyes are closed. Knowing often continues to move outward. It reaches for clarity. It looks for reference points. It asks where it is and what this means. There is nothing wrong with this movement. It is simply familiar. Tonight, another direction is available, not a better one, just a quieter one. Knowing can also move inward, not inward toward thought, but inward toward immediacy, toward what is already present before it is explained. This inward movement does not search. It does not compare. It settles. When knowing turns inward, it does not gather information. It releases attention back into the body, back into sensation, back into simple presence. Here, knowing becomes less active, less descriptive. It does not try to understand experience. It rests inside it. You may notice this as a subtle shift, not dramatic, not obvious, a sense that attention is no longer leaning forward. The body feels closer, more immediate. Breath feels less like something to observe and more like something that is simply happening. This inward knowing does not require effort. It does not need to be maintained. It appears naturally when outward movement slows. The world encourages outward knowing. It rewards it. It depends on it, but the night does not. The night allows knowing to settle inward without losing anything important. Nothing is forgotten here. Nothing is abandoned. It is only a change in direction. When knowing rests inward, there is less distance between awareness and experience. You're not watching the body, you are in it. You're not observing breath, you are breathing. This closeness does not sharpen attention, it softens it. Awareness becomes more diffuse, less pointed. It can rest without focus. Thoughts may still arise, but they do not pull knowing outward as strongly. They appear closer, less separate. They do not require response. This inward settling can feel unfamiliar because it does not accomplish anything. It does not move toward understanding. It does not produce insight. It simply rests, and rest does not need justification. When knowing is inward, time loses its forward pull. There is no sense of progress, no sense of delay. Moments do not stack up. They dissolve as they arrive. This is not disorientation. It is relief from direction. You do not need to stay here. You do not need to choose this direction. It happens naturally as effort decreases. Even if knowing briefly turns outward again, even if it checks, even if it names, the inward direction remains available, like a slope that gently returns attention back to rest. Nothing is forced, nothing is corrected. As this continues, the body remains settled, the breath remains steady. Awareness no longer needs to decide where to be. It can remain close, near sensation, near stillness. This inward knowing is not withdrawal. It is intimacy with what is present. It does not exclude the world. It simply stops reaching for it. In this intimacy, there is less separation, less effort to manage experience. Knowing becomes quiet, not absent, just at ease. And when knowing is at ease, rest deepens without instruction. There is nothing else to do. There is a sense of safety in this inward direction, not because anything is protected, but because nothing is being pursued. Knowing does not need to reach ahead. It does not need to confirm where it is. It can remain where experience is already unfolding. In this remaining, the body feels less like something to attend to and more like something to rest within. Awareness settles into weight, into warmth, into the simple presence of being here. There is no edge to find, no center to maintain. Knowing does not need to hold itself upright. Even effort feels unnecessary now. Not wrong, just unnecessary. The inward direction does not ask for attention. It allows attention to soften. It does not sharpen focus. It lets focus dissolve. This dissolution is gentle. It does not scatter awareness. It gathers it back into simplicity. Here, nothing is being oriented. Nothing is being tracked. Knowing is no longer a tool. It is a quiet presence. And in this quiet presence, rest is already happening. When understanding steps aside, something quieter remains. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with clarity. It is simply there. This quiet is not the result of effort. It does not come from doing something correctly. It appears when nothing is being held. Understanding is used to standing in front, explaining what is happening, giving shape to experience. When it rests, experience does not disappear, it continues, but without commentary. You may notice this as a subtle ease, not relief from solving something, just the absence of pressure. There is no longer a sense that something needs to make sense. The body continues to rest. The breath continues to move. Nothing is interrupted. This quiet does not ask for attention. It does not ask to be noticed. It remains whether you recognize it or not. In this quiet, awareness feels less busy, not empty, just unoccupied. It does not reach for meaning. It does not prepare for what comes next. It stays close to what is already here. You may notice that silence feels fuller now, not filled with content, but filled with presence. Sound may still exist, but it no longer needs to be separated from silence. They rest together. This quiet is not deep or shallow. It does not have levels. It is simply the absence of interference. Nothing is being arranged. Nothing is being evaluated. Experience is allowed to be unfinished. You do not need to protect this quiet. You do not need to stay with it. It remains even when attention drifts. Like stillness beneath small movements, understanding may return briefly. It may try to explain this quiet, to describe it. That movement does not disturb anything. The quiet does not depend on being understood. It is not fragile. As this continues, the body feels less separate, not merged with anything, just less divided. There is no strong sense of inside or outside. Sensation arises where it arises. Sound appears where it appears. Nothing needs to be placed. Time feels softer here, less directional. Moments do not line up. They do not point toward outcome. They simply pass. This is not timelessness. It is ease with time. Nothing is being waited for. Nothing is expected to arrive. The quiet does not promise rest. It does not guarantee sleep. It does not offer anything. And because it offers nothing, it asks nothing. This asking nothing is what makes it gentle. You may notice that even effort feels distant, as if it belongs to another moment. There is no need to stop effort. It simply loses relevance. The body settles further on its own, not deeper, just more completely. Breath moves without being noticed, then without being followed. Awareness becomes less pointed, less interested, not dull, just at rest. This quiet is not an achievement. It is not something you reach. It appears when reaching stops, and stopping does not require intention. It happens naturally, as attention no longer searches. The mind does not disappear here. It simply stops leading. It can remain in the background, quiet, uninvolved. There is no need to keep this quiet going, no need to stay with it, even if something changes, even if thought returns. The quiet does not leave. It remains underneath, like still water beneath gentle movement. You are not required to sink into it. You are already resting within it. Nothing more is needed. There is a softness that grows when nothing is being understood, not confusion, not dullness, just softness. This softness does not blur experience. It makes it less rigid. Sensations do not press as firmly. Thoughts do not land as heavily. Everything feels allowed to arrive and leave. You may notice that even noticing becomes unnecessary. Awareness does not need to turn toward anything. It can remain open without direction. This openness is not wide or narrow. It is simply unguarded. Nothing needs to be kept out. Nothing needs to be let in. The quiet continues in this unguarded way, unaffected by small shifts, unaffected by brief movements of mind. It does not react. It does not respond. It remains. You may feel that the body is resting more fully now, not because it has changed, but because nothing is asking it to hold itself together. Even the sense of being someone can soften, not disappear, just step back. There is less effort to be anything in particular. This is not loss. It is relief. The quiet does not take anything away. It only releases what is no longer needed. And as it releases, rest settles more completely. Nothing needs to follow this. Nothing needs to come next. The night can continue just as it is. At some point, sound no longer needs to be understood. It no longer needs to carry information. It can simply be present. This happens naturally, not because listening improves, but because effort fades. Words begin to lose their edges. They soften. They blur slightly, not in a confusing way, in a gentle way. You may notice that you no longer follow every sentence. You may notice that meaning becomes less important. This is not losing attention. It is attention changing its role. Sound is no longer something to track. It becomes part of the atmosphere, like air, like warmth, like darkness. It does not ask to be held. The body receives sound without interpreting it, without responding. Vibration arrives and passes. This is where listening becomes effortless. You are not listening for something. You are not listening to something. Sound simply moves through awareness. Silence does not disappear here. It remains present within sound. They are not separate. Even pauses do not stand out. They blend naturally. You may notice that the mind no longer tries to keep up. It no longer checks whether it understands. It allows sound to exist without reference. This is not a special skill. It is a natural response to rest. When effort releases, meaning releases with it. Sound no longer points to ideas. It no longer points to images. It does not lead anywhere. It simply continues. The body does not need to prepare for the next sound. It does not wait. It receives and lets go. In this way, sound becomes soothing without intention, not because it is pleasant, but because nothing is required of it. Even unfamiliar sounds would be the same here. They would not need interpretation. This is a space where recognition is unnecessary. Awareness does not need to label. It does not need to separate sound from silence. Everything arrives in the same way, softly, without demand. You may notice that the sense of direction fades further. There is no beginning to sound, no clear end. It does not move forward. It does not move backward. It simply exists within this moment. This is why words can end here, not because there is nothing left to say, but because saying is no longer needed. Sound can continue without explanation. The body already knows how to receive it. The breath already knows how to remain. You do not need to listen carefully now. You do not need to stay awake. Sound will continue whether you follow it or not. It can remain at the edge of awareness or drift beneath it. Both are fine. There is nothing important hidden in what comes next, nothing you need to catch. You have already heard enough. From here, sound can simply be sound, and you can simply rest. Sound no longer needs to arrive in sequence. It does not need to form a line. There is no first sound to notice, no last sound to wait for. Everything is already here. Even attention does not need to stay close. It can drift slightly. It can soften its grip. Sound will still arrive. You do not need to meet it halfway. You do not need to follow its shape. It can touch awareness lightly and move on. In this way, sound becomes part of rest itself, not something that supports rest, not something that creates rest, just something that exists within it. You may notice that even the sense of listening fades. There is no listener separate from sound. There is just presence and movement within it. Nothing needs to be understood from what is heard. Nothing needs to be remembered. Sound does not carry instruction here. It carries no request. It simply continues, and you are free to rest as it does. There is nothing more you need to receive tonight, nothing more you need to take in. You have already heard enough, not because everything has been said, but because nothing else is required. Understanding has done what it needed to do, and now it can remain at rest. Attention does not need to stay open. It does not need to stay alert. It can soften further. It can drift without direction. This moment does not ask you to listen carefully. It does not ask you to remain present. Even presence can rest. The body already knows what to do from here. It knows how to settle. It knows how to let go of the last small efforts that remain. You do not need to help it. Breathing continues in its own rhythm, steady, unforced. You do not need to follow it. You do not need to stay with it. It will continue whether you notice it or not. The mind no longer needs to make sense of anything. It no longer needs to keep track. Thoughts may still appear, or they may not. Neither matters. Nothing depends on what happens next. This is not a moment of completion. It is a moment of release. Release from needing more. Release from needing clarity. You may notice a sense of fullness, not because something has been added, but because nothing is lacking. There is no gap to fill, no question waiting. The night does not need to be guided. It knows how to unfold on its own. You are free to let it carry you. From here, words can become unnecessary. They have served their purpose. They have kept you company. Now they can fade into the background, like distant lights, like echoes that no longer need attention. Listening can become even softer, almost absent. Sound can pass through without being noticed. You do not need to stay awake for what comes next. You do not need to follow the transition. Everything will continue without effort. There is no instruction hidden ahead, no moment you need to catch. You have already arrived at rest. Even if it does not feel like arrival, nothing needs to change. This is enough. The body can sink a little more, not deeper, just easier. Muscles release what they are still holding, without instruction. Even the sense of time loosens. There is no before, no after, just this gentle continuation. You are not being led anywhere else. You are not being asked to stay. From here, everything is allowed to fade naturally. Words, attention, even the sense of listening. Nothing is being taken away. Nothing is ending abruptly. It is simply becoming quieter. You may not notice the exact moment when words disappear. That is fine. You may not notice when sound takes their place. That is fine too. There is nothing you need to witness. Everything that follows is gentle. Everything that follows is slow, and you do not need to follow it. For now, rest is already here, and that is enough. Nothing more needs to be gathered. Nothing more needs to be prepared. Even the idea of ending can rest. There is no final point to reach here, no closing moment that must be marked. Rest does not begin at a specific time. It simply continues when effort fades. You do not need to stay with this softness. You do not need to hold it in place. If attention drifts, if awareness loosens further, that is part of the same movement. There is no difference between staying and drifting now. Both lead in the same direction. The body no longer needs guidance. It does not need reassurance. It knows how to become heavier, how to become still, even if small movements remain, even if sensations change. Nothing interrupts this rest. The mind may briefly wonder if something else should happen. That wondering does not need an answer. It can appear and fade. Nothing depends on resolving it. You may notice that the sense of listening is almost gone now, not absent, just no longer active. Sound may still be present, but it no longer has a place to land. It passes through gently, like air moving through a quiet room. There is no effort to receive it, no effort to let it go. Both happen naturally. This moment does not need your participation. It is complete without involvement. You do not need to remain aware of resting. You do not need to notice sleep arriving. If sleep comes, it comes. If it does not, that is fine too. Nothing is being evaluated. The night has its own pace. It does not need encouragement. You can allow yourself to be carried by it without following, without choosing. Even the sense of self can soften further, not disappearing, just no longer standing forward. There is less need to be anyone in particular. This does not remove you from experience. It makes experience lighter. Nothing is lost here. Nothing important is left behind. Only unnecessary effort is released. You may not notice when words stop feeling distinct. You may not notice when sound blends into silence. There is no need to notice. Everything that matters is already settled. From this point on, nothing more will be asked of you. You are free to rest, free to drift, free to let everything fade naturally. This is not an ending. It is a gentle continuation, and it requires nothing from you. There is nothing else you need to do. Sometimes peace is not something we must learn. It is something we remember. The world pulls us outward, toward goals, toward noise, toward endless motion. But when the heart grows quiet, we begin to sense a deeper rhythm beneath it all, a rhythm that has always been waiting, softly calling us home. This quiet home lives inside you, but it can be easy to forget. That is why Gassho exists, not to add anything new, but to help you return. A space built for stillness, for reflection, for the gentle work of being. In its name, Gassho, there is a gesture, two hands meeting in respect and gratitude, a gesture of unity between self and world, between heart and breath, between sound and silence. When you open the Gassho app, you are not entering another screen. You are stepping into a small temple that travels with you, a place where you can sit without expectation, breathe without demand, and listen without effort. Inside you will find guided meditations, stories inspired by Buddhist wisdom, and the steady presence of sutras, not as lessons, but as companions. The sound you are about to hear is one of those companions, a sound carried through generations, a sound shaped by breath, devotion, and time. You do not need to understand the words. You do not need to follow the rhythm. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the sound arrive as it is. Let it move through awareness without resistance. Let it remain even as attention fades. There is nothing left to do, only to rest. Let the breath settle. Let the body sink, and simply listen. The sound of the sutra continues, offered from a temple in the quiet mountains of Koya-san, shared here through the Gassho app whenever you wish to return to silence.
死心生死高作修正理義不修天法安者牛法弁知としか知小法九小有一世界先生欲と調整感銘特性上高有権有楽宗教福心所有上連定本然不利高創然 Shah